तत्परं भाति विश्वस्यायतनं महत् सन्ततगुं शिलाभिस्तुलम्बत्याकोशसन्निभम् तस्यान्ते सुशिरगुं सूक्ष्मं तस्मिन् सर्वं प्रतिष्ठितम् तस्य मध्ये महानग्निर्विश्वार्चिर्विश्वतो मुखः सोऽग्रभुग्विभजन् तिष्ठन्नाहारमजरः कविः तिर्यगूर्ध्वमदश्यायैरश्मयस्तस्य सन्तता सन्तापयति स्वं देहमापादतलमस्तकः तस्य मध्ये वह्निशिखा अणियोर्ध्वा व्यवस्थितः नीलतो यदमध्यस्थाद्विद्युल्लेखे वभास्वरा नीवारशूकवत्तन्वी पीताभास्वत्यणुपमा तस्या शिखाया मध्ये परमात्मा व्यवस्थितः स ब्रह्म स शिवः स हरिस्सेन्द्रः सोऽक्षरः परमस्वराट् ऋतगुं सत्यं परं ब्रह्म पुरुषं कृष्णपिङ्गलम् ऊर्ध्वरेतं विरूपाक्षं विश्वरूपाय वै नमो नमः ॐ नारायणाय विद्महे वासुदेवाय धीमहि तन्नो विष्णुः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ
Aymarambho Shubhayo Bhavatu. With the chants of the Shanti Mantram and the national anthem, the Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture Golpark welcomes you all to the concluding phase of its 86th Foundation Day celebrations today. On this great occasion, we are proud to have with us Dr. C.B. Ananda Bose, the Honorable Governor of West Bengal and President of the Institute's Managing Committee. A prolific writer and columnist, he has 350 publications, including 50 books in English, Malayalam, and Hindi, 4 of them being the best sellers. Dr. Bose, the former IAS officer and the recipient of 33 international and national awards for his outstanding contributions in different fields, he will kindly preside over the meeting this evening. It's a great joy to announce that this year's Foundation Day speaker is none other than the well-known economist Dr. Professor Kaushik Basu, Padma Bhushan, who came all the way from Cornell University, New York, where he teaches economics. As you know, He was the Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India between 2009 and 2012, later taking over as the Chief Economist of the World Bank. He had also served a 3-year term as President of the International Economic Association, Dr. Basu. Also on the dais are Sri Ananda Kumar Mitra, the well-known legal luminary and former Advocate General of West Bengal, and Swami Suparnanandaji Maharaj, the Secretary of the Institute. May I now request the Secretary Maharaj to extend felicitations to the dignitaries on the dais, and that will be followed by his address of welcome, giving a glimpse of the multifarious activities of the Institute through its about 12 wings. Revered Maharaj to extend felicitations. जाओ
Om Jananing Sharadang Deving Ramakrishnang Jagat Gurum Pada Padmitayo Sritva Pranamami Mukmudmu. By the grace of Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna, Sri Srima Sharada Devi and Swami Vivekananda, the Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture had stepped into the 86th year of its eventful existence. On its foundation day today, we heartily welcome you all to this program at the Vivekananda Hall. Our grateful thanks to Dr. C.V. Anand, Bose, Hon'ble Governor of West Bengal, for his gracious presence as the President of the meeting this evening. Our heartiest welcome to the Governor, Sir, who is also the President of our Managing Committee. We welcome the well-known economist, Padma Bhushan, Professor Kaushik Basu, Professor of Economics at Cornell University, U.S.A. He will deliver this year's Foundation Day Oration on a very interesting subject. We also welcome Sri Ananda Kumar Mitra, formerly Advocate General, West Bengal, and Vice President of the Institute Managing Committee. We also welcome honorable members of the Managing Committee, the faculty members of the Institute, participants, guests, admirers. I am extremely happy to see our monastic brothers from Bilurmot, as well as from different branch centers. Most cordial welcome to you, brothers and Swamijis. We also extend our heartiest welcome to the Matajis who have joined us this evening. This ideology of the Institute is founded upon the universal principle of the spiritual oneness of all beings and all matters. Spiritual oneness rests in existence that is common to all life in microcosm, the real inner nature of each individual or jiva, and also the external nature of each object in macrocosm. This macro-reality, Brahman, and micro-reality, Atman, are one and the same, being the absolute. It is indivisible, unchanging, and eternal. the absolute, Swamiji says, which is indivisible, unchanging and eternal, has become this relative universe by coming into space-time and causation. The knowledge of the spiritual oneness is the foundation of true relationships. It removes all sense of distinction and privilege and transforms thoughts, emotion, and actions into channels of service to mankind. Thus, it is also the true basis of the world unity and peace and progress. During its glorious existence of 86 years, the Institute has earned both national and international recognition, and the present premises have been declared as a heritage building. Today, I gratefully remember and recognize the great contributions of the predecessors, Swami Nityaswarupananda, the founder secretary, Swami Ranganathanandaji, Swami Akunthanandaji, Swami Lokeshwaranandaji, Swami Prabhanandaji, and Swami Sarvabhutanandaji Maharaj for what the Institute is today. Let me now present before you a very brief report of the multifarious activities of the Institute through its different units during the past 1 year. The School of Languages first. Last year, in 2023, the total number of students enrolled for different courses was more than 16,000. The overwhelming majority being the girls. As you know, the School of Languages offers 21 languages, 15 foreign and 6 Indian. It has also started a civil service coaching unit for the benefit of WBCS and IAS and IPS aspirants. The School of Languages is also running free coaching classes for the needy students pursuing English honors and master's degrees in English in the colleges or UGC recognized universities. Secondly, the Center for Indological Studies and Research during the academic year, a total number of 27 scholars undertook 24 postdoctoral studies and 2 projects. It also conducted, among others, a 10-month certificate course on Indology, a 16-week course on some fundamental concepts of Indian philosophy, a 10-month certificate course on Ramakrishna Vivekananda movement, a 10-month certificate course on major religions of the world, a 2-tier functional Sanskrit course, and also a 9-month UNESCO-supported program on international understanding for human unity. The department also organized a couple of seminars, including a 3-day international seminar in March and another 2 days international seminar in October. Thirdly, the library. Foremost among the public libraries in India, our library had 3 wings: General Wing, Children's Library, and the Junior Section. The library currently holds more than 3 lakh books. The members of the library can browse 24,000 periodicals and download articles for reading as well as printing. A number of upgrades were added to the library during the period under review. Next, our publication department. The department and the Center for Indological Studies and Research brought out 15 books. And as we know, and all of us know, the publication of the Cultural Heritage of India in 9 volumes, and the History of Sciences in 8 volumes, and the translation of the Vedas in 55 volumes. Fifth, the museum and art gallery, as well as Sarada Devi School of Fine Arts and Crafts. Other than providing practical training on arts and crafts to the students, opting different courses, this department held 21 exhibitions around the year. Special mention may be made of our annual exhibition on portraits of different medium of arts The department also conducted one-year Dhrupad classical vocal classes and Yogasana courses. Next, the youth program department, it organized 118 youth conferences in almost all the districts of West Bengal with more than 14,000 youth participating in them. Further, 5 guardian conferences and 2 teachers' conferences were held. A total number of 18.5 thousand copies of value-oriented books were distributed free of cost among the participating delegates. Also, the weekly Vivekananda Onusiran classes on Saturdays were held. As usual, much to the benefit of the teenagers, academic counseling by experienced psychiatrists deserved special mention. Next, cultural activities. The Department of Cultural Activities held various programs throughout the year to promote Indian culture and heritage. During the period under review, 131 endowment lectures, 8 public lectures, 14 scriptural classes, 35 cultural programs, and 91 collaboration programs were held at the Institute. Next is the Gadadhar Pathshala, Vivekananda Sastho, Pariseva Prakalpo, and welfare activities. Presently, 80 children from underprivileged families, most in slum areas, study at our Pathshala, Gadadhar Pathshala, while a sum of rupees 8 lakh was spent to meet all possible needs of the children. Under Vivekananda Sastha Pariseva Prakalpo, 80 children from class 1 to class 7 are well taken care of. Apart from this, the regular contribution of milk and other foodstuff to the poor, especially the children and their mothers, continued, for which more than a sum of rupees 5.5 lakhs was spent during the year. The Institute also regularly extended medical support to the deserving patients, pecuniary help to the needy for basic sustenance, and also conducted various welfare activities for which Institute spent more than rupees 36.5 lakhs. The Institute also gave scholarships and stipend, etc., to the needy and meritorious students from different parts of the country, the overwhelming majority being from West Bengal. The total welfare amount paid in the last year was 84 lakhs. We take this opportunity to say thank you to all donors, well-wishers, dear participants, and brother monks of the Institute for their kind contribution to a very noble cause. I earnestly pray to Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna, Sri Srima Sarada, and Swami Vivekananda that we may hold on to the ideals of practical Vedanta and that our Institute continues to grow from strength to strength. Our gratitude is due to the central and state governments for their liberal grants. Once again, I heartily welcome you all to this evening program. Thank you. Namaste.
Our grateful thanks and pranams to Secretary Maharaj for reminding us of the mission and vision of the Institute while referring to the various services rendered by the Institute. My dear audience, in view of an extremely urgent piece of business, we have to reschedule the program. Honorable Governor of West Bengal will have to hasten his departure from us to attend an extremely urgent meeting. So may I now request Honorable Governor Sir, who is also a scholar extraordinary, to talk to us. In fact, he will be giving us the presidential speech earlier. Sir.
Most revered Swami Subarnananda ji, distinguished Professor Kaushik Basu, Hon'ble Sri Anindya Kumar Mitra, Honorable spiritual luminaries in front of the audience, in front of the dais, ladies and gentlemen, friends, Amar Banglar, Bhai or Bonera. I am delighted to be here along with these distinguished personalities who are on and off the dais. As a student of English literature, I remember what Dryden said about the characters of Chaucer. He said, "Here is God's plenty. Here is God's plenty." I'm glad to be here with sharing a days with the great Professor Kaushik Basuji. I have always been a distant admirer of his, though I have not met him. I wanted to call on him in America when I go there. Now I have been told I am here with him. That's God's grace. Sir, if you may remember, when you were heading the World Bank, close on heels came another Indian who was the chief economist of the International Monetary Fund, IMF. That is Geeta Gopinath. I had the occasion to meet Geeta. And then also I said, I had the ambition to meet Professor Kaushik Basu. Now the dream has come true. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I pay my deepest respect and homage to the great soul, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. Right from my childhood, my grandmother used to insist that I read the works of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and Vivekananda. I never knew that I would be here in this great institution hallowed by his memory as its president. God has his own ways. I'm thankful that I'm here as the humble president of this organization, not as the governor. Now, I am at a loss where to begin. So many anecdotes of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa I had the occasion to read in my childhood and also repeat in my speeches here and there. Now, I thought I'll confine myself to three of the most arresting observations or profound statements made by Ramakrishna. A boat may stay in water, but water should not stay in boat. How beautifully the complexities of life are presented. A boat may stay in water, but water should never stay in a boat. A spiritual aspirant may live in the world, but the world should not live within him. This is a great thought which has been propounded in the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita explains the quintessence of this observation of the great Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. A boat may not stay in water, but water should not stay in boat. This is the correlation between matter and the mind, correlation between body and the soul. I remember once Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, the great Indian philosopher, may also digress a little bit and tell you, as Dr. Radhakrishnan was a respected Spalding professor of Oxford, and there is one more person of that stature in the international arena, that is none other than Professor Kaushik Basu. 3 cheers to him. When Dr. Radhakrishnan was a Spalding professor, there was a lecture by him explaining the relation between matter and mind, or science and spirituality, or whatever you call it. Radhakrishnan came to St. Albert's Hall. Thousands of scholars were assembled there. Here is going to be the most lucid explanation of the relationship between matter and mind. Radhakrishnan stood up and made the shortest speech he ever made. The entire world was watching to understand the complex meaning of matter and mind. Dr. Radhakrishnan said in his speech, "What is matter?" The whole world listened, stayed in rapt attention to see what is the answer. Question, what is matter? Answer, never mind. Question, what is mind? Answer, does not matter. Speech ended there. Now, this is a capsule like that, where we say infinity in an hour, hold infinity in an hour, and eternity on the palm of your hand. That is what we see in this pithy but arresting statement of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa ji. A boat may stay in water, but water should not stay in boat. What is mind? What is body? You know, the Bhagavad Gita establishes a relation between these two in very, very simple terms. When the question was asked, yes, Om Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre, Samaveda Yursava, Mamaga Pandavaschaiva, Kimakurvada Sanjaya. Very simple question. It only means Dhritarashtra is asking Sanjay, please tell me what is happening in Dharmakshetra Kurukshetra between my children and Pandu's children. Very simple question. The question is simple, but the answer is so complex that in so short pages, lines, Bhagavan Krishna has given the secret to the world, the complex relation between the body and the soul. What is life? What is body? What is soul? He speaks about it. Jadasya Dhruvar Mrutyam. Jadasya Dhruvar Mrutyam. Dhruvam Janma Mridasya Ja. Tasmad Apariharyate Nattam Shojidam Arhasi. As a student, I learned it, not understand the meaning of that. Even now, I have not been able to understand fully the impact of that. When we say, if you die, if you live, you will be die. If you die, you will be reborn. That is almost like what is said in Amarkayam Brahmayat, unborn tomorrows and dead yesterdays. Why fret about them if today be the sweet? Gita stands at the sublimity of the spiritual. Rubaiyat at the sublimity of the material. See where the twain is imaging? More or less the same sentiments expressed in different ways. Jadasya Dhruvar Mrutyam, Dhruvam Janma Mridasya Tasmad Apariharyate Natvam Shojitam Arhasi. We are told that the body is nothing but the clothes that we wear. You can throw it away. But the soul is not like that. I, as an ignoramus in the field of spirituality, I used to think, what does it mean? As an ordinary human being, I can feel my body, I can see my body, I can sense my body, but I cannot sense my soul. My own soul I cannot touch. I haven't seen my soul. I don't understand what is soul. This complex question has been answered in very simple terms through allegory by the Lord. Nayanam Chindanti Shastrani. Nayanam Chindanti Shastrani. Nayanam Dahati Pavagaha. Nachayanam Gledayandiapu. Nashoshayadi Mairadhagam. The indestructibility of the soul. The destructibility of the body, indestructibility of the soul. Once you understand this, then you will understand the meaning of what Ramakrishna Paramahamsa says. A boat may stay in water, but water should not stay in boat. Meaning, a spiritual aspirant may live in the world, but the world should not live within him. I remember a poem of Gerard Manley Hopkins, the Jesuit priest. He wrote a poem, The Wreck of the Deutschland. From the port of Bremen in Germany, a ship set sail. On the way, there is a shipwreck. The ship is about to capsize. Those who have seen the film Titanic would know the panic that is there in a ship which is going to sink. Similar was that there in the wreck, the Deutschland, ship called Deutschland. People are running helter-skelter up and down in the same boat, pushing each other, thinking that they will be able to overcome the forces of nature. There is panic and pell-mell everywhere. There, 5 nuns, unruffled and serene. They were going from passenger to passenger, pacifying them. The poet asks, when they knew that their life is in danger, How could they do this? How could they remain so calm and quiet? That is because total supplication to God. Total supplication to God. They could achieve the total supplication. Once you leave everything to God, then what is to be afraid of? That moment, they realized in their life what Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said, a boat may stay in water, but water should not stay in boat. This universal philosophy, the whole cosmos has been capsuled into this one sentence. That is what has been achieved here. And then Dr. Radhakrishnan, I told you, he had the quintessence of the best that is there in the thought of India. The essence of Bharat was there. We had great masters like Vivekananda, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Rabindranath Tagore, who have kept this place a safer place for others to live in. That is a great contribution which has been given by these great men who are from Bengal, who enriched not only Bengal, enriched the whole world. Then I came across another quotation of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. All troubles come to an end when the ego dies. All troubles come to an end when the ego dies. Recently, the media asked me, sir, what is happening in Bengal? The conflict between, who and who, is it the result of ego? I said, when I see ego in front of me, I say, you go. When ego comes, say, you go. From our mind, whenever you are infested by ego in yourself, please tell you go. That will be only way to achieve what Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said. All troubles come to an end when the ego dies. Otherwise, as the greatest of the great, the most valiant, most scholarly, most blessed being in society, who ever since was born, Ravana, he was the greatest of the great in every field. As a warrior, as a scholar, as a singer. Ravana was also a great singer. And Mahadeva called him the great devotee of mine. That was Ravana. Ravana was all powerful, desirable in every way, gifted in every way. Why did Ravana fall? Because of ego, ahamkar. That is what destroys everybody. That is a canker which eats you from within. That is what is given here. All troubles come to an end when the ego dies. When does the ego die? The ego dies when you realize yourself within. There is always a conflict between the self and the soul in every man. Yes, once you are able to overcome this, once you realize the real man in you, the real manifestation of God in you, then you can overcome this. In Hindu thought, as I understand, there is a God who resides in your forehead. That goddess is called Tatha Astu. Tatha Astu is a goddess who resides in your forehead. Tatha Astu means, let it be so. After every Christian prayer, they say Amen. That means, let it be so. Tatha Astu means, let it be so. Now, before you venture upon any task, suppose you say in your mind, oh, I do not have wherewithal for this. I do not have the capital. I do not have the manpower. I may not succeed in this venture. The goddess within you will say, Tatha Astu. Let it be so. But suppose you say, I am born to win. Who is there to stop me? I will never take no for an answer. I will win. The goddess will say, Tatha Astu. So, you are your own master. The mind, that is why it is said, the mind is its own place, Milton. The mind is its own place and in itself can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven, right? The mind is its own place and in itself can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven. According to me, in my humble opinion, everything is born twice. First in the mind and then in the field. Vision should precede action, isn't it? Vision should precede action. The poet W.B. said, "Oh, the mind has mountains and chasms no man fathom." The mind has mountains and chasms no man fathom. Vision and action. Everything in the world begins with a vision. In the Bible, they say, in the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God, the Word was God. Which means, before the creation took place, it was all in the mind and the vision of God. What man should be, what day and night should be. When God said, the book of Genesis, God said, "Let there be light," and light there was. And the human beings are all created in the image of God. First there is a vision, then there is action. Look at the great revolutions of the world, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution. The revolution, most important, greatest of the great revolutions of the world. India's freedom struggle, all started as a vision in the mind of one man or a group of men, isn't it? Then, take for instance the great art world, before Michelangelo dipped his brush in paint, before drawing the beautiful frescoes, the Sistine Chapel, the Day of the Judgment, he had a vision of what it will be. Before Shakespeare put his pen in ink, he had a vision of what Macbeth is, what Hamlet is, what As You Like It is, what Othello is. Vision should precede action. That is very important. All troubles come to an end when knowledge leads to unity, yes. When we say these great men, Vivekananda or Sri Ramakrishna, made these profound statements, in their mind they had traversed through all these places. In Coleridge's Biographia Literaria, he speaks about imagination, 3 types of imagination: primary imagination, secondary imagination, and exemplastic imagination. Primary imagination, people like me also have. Secondary imagination, of course, the great poets have. Exemplastic imagination, that is what only Sri Ramakrishna and Vivekananda and Tagore had. When one has this exemplastic imagination guiding you, what happens is, what Coleridge himself has written in his dream poem, the Kubla Khan. In a dream, the poem came. When he wrote it, in his dream itself, the whole poem was composed. Yes, in Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure-doomed decree, where Ralph, the sacred river, ran through caverns measureless to men, down to a sunless sea. When it exemplastic imagination sublimity, he on honeydew hath fed and drank the milk of paradise. Visionaries like Vivekananda and Ramakrishna, they are the ones who, they on honeydew hath fed and drank the milk of paradise. That is sublimity. When it happens in you, that is the change that happens there also. Let us not forget that any of these statements made by these great men are the quintessence of wisdom, knowledge. They may act as a drop in the world of knowledge, but a drop is very important. Kabir Das has said, when a drop falls in the ocean, that drop merges into the ocean. But you do not know, ocean also merges into the drop. That is the beauty of the nature. Everything is intertwined. There is nothing small or big. The unity of brotherhood of life, that is what is underscored by great sages and visionaries like Sri Ramakrishna, Sri Aurobindo, and of course Vivekananda. Now I do not want to extend my speech. Knowledge leads to unity, but ignorance to diversity. This is a profound statement of observation made by Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. What does it mean? Knowledge leads to unity, but ignorance to diversity. This religious fanaticism, factional feuds, everything in the name of God, that is because of ignorance. Once the knowledge comes, all religions are the same. They flow in different directions like the rivers. finally end in the ocean. That is the ocean of unity. But we perceive only diversity, we do not see the unity within diversity. I do not want to lengthen my speech about the king of Ujjain. The king of Ujjain is in his deathbed. The ministers say, it is time for the coronation of the prince. But the king from his deathbed says, no, he is not fit enough to be the king. Then everybody was aghast. The king said, let him go out of the palace, live with the common man, learn from them and come back. The prince dutifully went out and lived with the common man. He understood how they think, how they feel, how they react, what are their priorities, what are their problems. Then he came back and told all that he learned. The minister said, perfect, the coronation can take place. The king said from his deathbed, no, no. Let him go to the forest. There is a sage there, a hermit there. Learn from him. The prince went to the hermit. The hermit only said, go out and listen in the forest. The king listened to many, many new sounds which he had never heard in the palace. The lullaby of the brooks, the rustle of the leaves, the cry of the wolves, the animals. Then he reproduced everything to the hermit. The hermit said, no, no, not enough. Listen, listen. The prince listened with rapt attention. Then he came and said, I heard two new voices. What is that? I heard the voice of the daybreak. I heard the voice of honey getting filled in the flower. The hermit said, yes. Now you are fit enough to the leader to lead, to be with the king. You should be able to listen to the sound of silence. You should be able to see what others do not see. You should be able to hear what others do not hear. That is knowledge. Knowledge, that knowledge, being able to hear to the, listen to the half tones and the quarter tones of what is going on around you, the meaning without meaning, that is what makes you a leader. That is what he said. Knowledge leads to unity, but ignorance to diversity. Now, I have to keep my promise that I will stop here. But I am not going to stop here. I remember a discomfiture which I had, which I will share with all of you. I was district collector, that is district magistrate, of a district called Kollam in Kerala. There, an international interfaith conclave was organized by a great organization for about 1 week, almost like the Chicago conference which attended by Vivekananda. Great scholars came from all over the world. Very profound speeches were made. That day, it is a turn of Swami Chinmayananda. He was to give his discourse on Bhagavad Gita, or something, normally he gives on Bhagavad Gita. So, I also went there, because I know Chinmayananji, and being the district collector, I thought I'll meet him and pay my respects to him and listen to his oration. Then I hear an announcement in the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, your attention please. Swami Chinmayananda's flight has been delayed by 1 hour. Next announcement. It was like a bombshell to me. In the meantime, our district collector, C.V. Ananda Bose, will speak to you. My God. No information about it. Somehow the announcement having been made and thousands of people who came to listen to Chinmayanandaji was there. I asked, what is the topic of discussion? Then they said, you know what is the topic? Dialectical materialism and the essence of Indian philosophy. Have you understood anything? I did not understand a thing. But I started speaking dialectical materialism and the essence of Indian philosophy. 15 minutes, somehow I could manage. Then I get a chit. I was very relieved. Normally when you speak and get a chit, it means please wind up. You know what was written there? The flight has been delayed by 1 more hour, please speak on. That is scene number 1. Scene number 2, I was invited to address the United Nations General Assembly special session on environment-friendly housing, for which my organization was picked up that time as a global best practice by the UN. So I was given there, award was given, and 3 minutes were allotted to me to speak there. That was also well received. Very happy I came to a hotel room in Manhattan. At midnight, I get a call. At that time, mobile is not very popular. Long distance call from Kerala. It was very evident that an elderly lady is on the other end. And she asked me, is it Dr. Bose? I said, yes, ma'am. Dr. Bose, I need your help. Please tell me, ma'am. Dr. Bose, I am not able to sleep for the last 3 days. I need your help. I said, maybe she thought I'm a medical doctor. I said, ma'am, I'm not a medical doctor. No, I know. See. I am Professor Stella De Cruz, who was Professor of English in Padma College, Kollam, and you are District Collector here. Oh, ma'am, how are you? Are you okay? How is your health? Not everything okay. I'm having diabetes, sugar, and all this. I'm not able to speak, or able to sleep. Please help me. So she knows me and she's asking me for help. So I thought, ma'am, do you have hypertension? I have hypertension. Are you in the habit of taking sleeping pills before you sleep? Yes, I'm in the habit. Maybe you would have forgotten that, that's why you're not able to. No, I have taken phenobarbital. And so being a professor, she read out all the names of these pills. I have taken all these things, so nothing. Only you can help me. Only you can help me. I thought, how can I help you, ma'am? Dr. Bose, do you remember when you were district collector here in Kollam, you gave a speech on dialectical materialism and the essence of Indian philosophy. Yes, ma'am. Can you say that once again over phone? I want to sleep. So before you say that, thank you very much for the opportunity to go to me. Thank you so much.
But sir, the audience is extremely grateful to you for your spellbinding talk. You fluently quoted from literature, philosophy, religious texts. And we are really grateful to you for your talk that was intellectually so stimulating and spiritually elevating, also referring to the quintessence of India's spiritual heritage. Thank you, sir. So as announced earlier, Honorable Governor Sir will take leave of us and the national anthem will be presented too. The audience requested to stand up, please.
Thank you so much.
Start.
my dear audience, our country has come a long way from being a colony to a leading economy in the world today. India is the fastest growing major economy and is among the top 5 economic powers of the world today. There was a time when we were at college, the then American ambassador to India, Mr. Mainihan, he had rather contemptuously remarked, "What does India export except communicable diseases?" And now, in the last financial year itself, India exported to America the pharmaceutical products, medicines, food items, machinery, etc. worth $112.47 billion, প্রায় 10 লক্ষ কোটি টাকা. And a time was when the old timers should remember the World Bank chief Robert McNamara. He said India would always survive on the aid from the West. And now, India is the largest exporter of rice and the second largest exporter of wheat in the world today. But there is no room for self-complacency. Miles to go before we reach the target. But what is our target? What about the road ahead? How to reach the goal? And what should be the role of today's students who have gathered here in large numbers? Many such questions come to our mind, and definitely you cannot find a better professor than Dr. Professor Kaushik Basu to give answer to these questions. This year's topic is the journey of India's economy since independence and the road ahead. Professor Basu.
Pointer actually for the PowerPoint over there. Good. Very good. Thank you very much for that generous introduction. Swami Shuparnananda Maharajji, my brother-in-law Anindo Mitro, I see lots of familiar faces over here of monks, revered monks, friends, and there must be teachers, students and administrators to all of you. I'm really absolutely delighted to be here. India, my visit this time was basically a holiday, but when there is an invitation from Ramakrishna Mission's any wing, I find it very difficult to say no. So it's really a very deep pleasure in me to be here. There are many ways in which I have to say, I'm not a conventional religious person. It'll be a lie if I say that. But I'm bewildered by the world, this mysticism of the world. And Swami Vivekananda, Ramakrishna, Sri Sri Ma, they touch a chord in me in a way that I cannot explain. That is what makes this very special for me to come here. I discuss with friends, I'm no scholar of these people's writings and sayings. And Swami Vivekananda, when he was in Chicago, when he lived in New York, as I discovered to my sheer delight, that one street on which I was living in New York, it was my American brother-in-law who, while browsing through something, said, "Did you know that Swami Vivekananda lived on this street?" it did give me a very, very special feeling. When someone writes and speaks 100 years, 150 years ago, sentences mean differently, people dispute what was said, all I can say is that Swami Vivekananda's writings, speeches touch a chord in me, and in a very deep way, I feel I understand him very, very deeply. And it's the same message from Ramakrishna, from Sri Srima of the oneness of the world, which was referred to in the introductory remarks by the Honorable Governor, by Swami Suparnanandaji. This appeals to me. Last evening, a friend of mine from Washington phoned, and I said I'm in Kolkata for just one day for the Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture. He was immediately struck and stunned. He said, all I can tell you is that this is an amazing institution, Ramakrishna Mission, because his wife is a Christian from Shillong. And he said to her, Lait Mukhra is the place where there is a Ramakrishna Mission. And he said that to her it is a space of a citadel of spirituality, a citadel of openness and secularism, that they collectively respect this place in a way which is amazing. It struck a chord in me. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak. Before I get into the topic of the Indian economy, a few caveats by way of economics, economic theory, which is my primary interest. You know, economics is a very strange subject. It's got extremely political today. You say one good thing, it's interpreted politically. You say a bad thing, it's interpreted politically. But you must realize that in the end, it's a strange big organism, the economy, that we want to try to understand. And above all, you need honesty and clarity, and there will be problems. Economics is a strange subject because there are parts of it which is intuition, common sense, and an intelligent politician, intelligent bureaucrat can do that. But there are parts of economics which are really like a hard science and engineering. One particular example of that, if I get a chance in today's talk, I will get back to it and tell you, is auction design. How you design an auction is like an engineering exercise. It's a mathematical exercise, and there are some theorems in economics about auction design, and India is now beginning to do auctions at a level at which Americans have mastered it. So it is this strange subject which makes room for, yes, lots of wrong predictions that happen, and you have to be humble, as was just reminded us. There's no place for ego over there. There will be mistakes. At the same time, you have to realize that everything is not guesswork and common sense. You also have to bring in expertise, data, and try to bring it all into the discipline to understand. This is by way of side remark. This is economics. The discipline game theory is my research interest. I work a lot on that, and if Swami Suparnanandaji makes the mistake of inviting me later to give a full lecture on game theory and economics, I'll very happily do that, but not today. Today, this brief remark has to be kept as a digression put aside. I want to just talk about India with all the bits that we understand, all the bits that we don't understand. It's this. So my initial remarks, just keep them aside for a later day. You know, just 40 years ago, a friend of my mother's gave a cookbook, Bangla Rannar Boi, Bengali dishes, to me and my wife. My wife is not a Bengali, she's a Bengali Maharashtrian. So my mother's friend gave this book, cookbook of Bangla dishes, written in English, basically for her to learn. Books from 40 years ago, I've misplaced them, but this book has an important place in my shelf in New York. And the reason is, inside this book, there is one dish which is unbelievable. It's quite a special one. In the beginning, you start, peyaj kuchiye, ektu bete, you do something, lots of things with the peyaj, you put it aside, then you bring the fish. Machtage tel diye, bheje, mosla toshla diye, onek kaida karamoti. The amazing thing about this dish written by my mother's friend is you never again return to the peyaj which has been kept aside. Now, My American friends think this is something adhyatmik or something very special exercise. But my feeling is she just forgot about the piyaj, so the dish is cooked without that. You have to treat my initial remarks about economics, the methodology of like the chopped onions to be pushed aside, and allow me to get into the discipline. I want to give you a brief history from 1947. 1947, India's independence. If you look at roughly the first 15 years, I would say even more than that, about 20, 25 years, on the surface, very little seems to be happening in India. If you look at plain, simple growth that was referred to just now, India is now growing at a pretty good rate. If you look at India's growth rate, over the first about 20 years, almost till the early 1970s, from 1947, India's growth rate was roughly 3 to 3.5% per annum. And population was growing at 2.5% per annum, so per capita income is barely growing. It's still better than before independence. Independence made a difference because there are very good studies by Shiva Subramaniam, the great authority of statistical analysis of the economic growth. Up to 1947, 1950, the first 50 years, India's growth rate was roughly 1% per annum. It goes up to 3.5%, but just not good enough. So what was happening in India? I do believe that there were a couple of policy mistakes. I will talk about that. But there were also important things that were happening we cannot ignore. For instance, one of the most important things, and I think we are getting a lot of benefit of that today, is the appreciation of the importance of education, especially higher education. It is quite an amazing achievement of India. I've got the years over here with me, 1949, Delhi School of Economics, V.K.R.V. Rao, working with the Prime Minister Nehru, is working on setting up the Delhi School of Economics, which becomes an amazing institution with K.N. Raj, V.K.R.V. Rao, later on Manmohan Singh, Jagdish Bhagwati, Amartya Sen. In a school, in a developing country, a school of this kind is really difficult to imagine. The IITs come up very early. 1950s, amazing institutions. I mean, all over the world, IITs are recognized as absolutely top-flight institutions. By the early 1960s, Indian Institutes of Management, I think it begins in Kolkata and Ahmedabad, and then the others begin to come up. The universities are top class, and one thing which I used to say for many years, I lived and worked at the Delhi School of Economics. Going to international conferences, if you're going to Europe or America or anywhere in the world, Japan, the people who would be very comfortable in these conferences would be Americans, large number of Americans. Europeans would be very comfortable, large number. Only developing country where you did not feel out of place at all was India, I have to say. It's the quality of our higher education. We felt completely comfortable in these settings that we are also bringing the best ideas to the table. So it's an amazing achievement. It did not spill over into economic growth, at least in the first 20 years, but I feel that the revolution that takes place in the information technology based on the engineering skills from the 1990s, a lot of the groundwork was being done there. Number two is the effort on data and statistics, which we do not give enough emphasis to, but Prashanta Mahalanobis, bringing statistical methods of randomized data collection. You know, if you want to study a country as big as India, going to every household and collecting data is virtually impossible. The cost of that will be huge. But if you can choose a random sample from all over India, and then using the law of large numbers, you can study this sample and begin to get a sense of how India was doing. And as the Nobel Prize winner Angus Deaton said, that in these statistical techniques, India was a front runner compared to even the most advanced economies, and that is again Prashanta Mahalanobis bringing to the table some of these best methods. Planning, Indian planning, I have mixed feelings about that. I don't think it was terribly effective, but it's a huge intellectual exercise, bringing in some of the best people. Again, the second 5-year plan is Prashanta Mahalanobis's model being analyzed, and India is making this huge plan. The third 5-year plan is Sukhomoy Chakraborty's work, and Sukhomoy Da, he was my colleague, he died very prematurely, was this stunning scholar who put in a lot of input into India's intellectual development, early policy making. He was also quite a delightful person, humble, but the way he talked, occasionally it would come out otherwise. The very, very famous economist Vasily Leontiev, if there are economists in the room, you will know the name. He started the input-output analysis, Russian, who had moved to America and based in the United States. The Leontiev model was one of the biggest things in the world. Leontiev and Sukhomoy Chakraborty as a young person, apparently got into a polite argument. I have to verify the authenticity of this story, I've just heard it. After some time, Sukhomoy Da told Leontiev, Professor Leontiev, with all due respect, I don't think you understand the properties of Leontiev matrices. That is Sukhomoy Da talking there. So India was in the forefront, but in this intellectual space, and one more I'll tell you, which to me is very important. Democracy, openness, religious openness, it's quite amazing that what India was trying, the free media and press. You know, a whole lot of countries tried similarly, from Ghana, Nkrumah in Ghana, Kenya, Sukarno, Jinnah in Pakistan, a whole lot of people are trying this. One after another, countries were stumbling. There would be a coup, there would be a grab for power by someone. All these things were stumbling. India did have 2 very difficult years, 75 to 77. But barring that, it's been an amazing journey of these political institutions, of openness, of a media of a kind when I used to feel proud when I worked in government. Pride is not a good emotion, but occasionally I would feel pride when journalists would come and tell me that there are very few countries outside the advanced economies where people can stand in a park and criticize freely government policy the way it happens in India, which is quite remarkable. These institutions were built in place, but growth remained slow. And there was one important failure, which we have to admit. While higher education in India was doing very, very well, primary education, literacy, we did not do well at all. It became a dual system. By the 1980s, when you're looking at data across the world, it's clear that while at the top end, Indians are there all over the world, teaching, doing research. Basic literacy, India was beginning to trail behind sub-Saharan Africa. There's no harm in that, another country doing better than you, but much poor countries doing better is a sign of your failing, that you had not managed to do enough. So that was a failing. By the mid-1990s, that was beginning to change. India still has a great distance to go on basic education and literacy, but it is on the right direction. It's moving and catching up. That's the scenario broadly up to the time that I'm talking about, 1975. 1975 is a very special year. 25th of June, you probably know, all of you, the date, I don't know how many people know, that's the date of the Indian emergency. India's growth up to there had remained roughly 3.5%. Before 1975, India was beginning to stumble in terms of the economy from about 1972-73. Indira Gandhi, who had reached a high point in 1971 with the Bangladesh independence, was coming under a lot of criticism with the economy stumbling, but there was something happening globally. Oil prices were shooting up because OPEC had been formed. It was a global cartel which was pushing up prices, but the Indian economy was doing poorly. 1975, that day, 24th of June, as Indira Gandhi was deliberating on what to do, we know that there was again a Calcutta person involved, Siddhartha Shankar Rai, who was advisor to Indira Gandhi. Siddhartha Shankar Rai on the 24th of June spends the day, he says, in fact, tells Indira Gandhi that if you want to use the law, the constitution to do what you want to do, I need some time in my chamber to read. He goes away, he comes back, 352, Article 352 of the Constitution, he says, can be used. All decision taken. This is a footnote to the economic story, but quite interesting. Close to midnight, as Siddhartha Shankar Ray is leaving, he pauses and says, you know, tomorrow morning you're going to announce the emergency. The Indian media is very, very free, and you're going to immediately get criticism. At which point, Sanjay Gandhi steps out from another room and says, I've taken care of that. Electricity will be cut off from all newspapers. So you will have a little bit of time before the newspapers can put the things in order. But thanks to Indian little slips, we should be grateful for some little slips, they forgot to cut the electricity in Statesman. So Statesman came out with everything the next day. But after that, nearly 2 years was a dismal period. Dismal period with one thing about the economy. 1975-76, after this long stretch, 27 years of hardly any growth, 3.5%, the economy grows at 9%. 75-76. The trains were running on time, as it was being said. Trains were running on time. People were scared and worried. The economy, and people said that it's working. That is what India needed. I do not think so. I think it was a great mistake, that kind of top-down control. And you would have to just wait a little bit to see what happened. 9% growth. 4 years later, 1979-80, India's growth was minus 5.2%, which had never happened before and never happened after, till perfectly understandable, the year 2021. Because of COVID, we dipped even more. But short of that, we've never had that kind of a performance. So this control, which gave an initial boost, began stumbling after that. 2 years later, Indira Gandhi, of course, called an election and lost. From the polls, it was not obvious, but she lost. You know, over here, this is with the finance minister, later President Pranab Mukherjee. I worked with him very closely when I was in government. In his last days, Pranab Mukherjee told me something which is to me fascinating. There's no way of knowing for sure, and he was also modest enough to say he didn't know for sure. Why did Indira Gandhi call that election? Some people say it was hubris. It was confidence that I am popular and I will win. Pranab Mukherjee told me that probably not so, because it seems after a meeting in Murshidabad, Pranab Mukherjee met Indira Gandhi after Indira Gandhi's meeting in Murshidabad, and Indira Gandhi told Pranab Da that my time is gone, popularity is waning. So she virtually knew she would lose and still had the election. Pranab Mukherjee's analysis was that she probably realized that she was destroying an institution that had been built by her father. There may have been other justification she was regretting, but who knows? And Pranab Mukherjee stood with Indira Gandhi through this very controversial period where I think her policies were wrong. She comes back later. India's economy from 1981-82 picks up in growth. It's interesting, India's now growing at about 5% per annum. And my hunch is over here that Indira Gandhi's policies, Indira Gandhi, unlike Nehru, did not have very strong views about economic policy. Nehru had strong views, and he would sit with strong views, though he was very open to bringing in top scholars from Mahalanobis to K.N. Raj to V.K. R.V. Rao, and several from abroad were coming, talking and all, but he had his views, what he wanted, a kind of Fabian socialism. By then he realized it was not working his last years. Indira Gandhi, my view is, had political views, how to handle, but did not have strong economic views of her own. She was deeply influenced by her father initially, and later when she comes back to power by her sons. And her policies by then are more liberal, and India's economy is growing at roughly 5% per annum. By the end of 1980s, even faster, and then the stumbling takes place by 1991, as you probably all know. What happened, just very briefly, one mistake that was happening in the late 1980s, what was not being picked up, and I will not go into details over here, India's fiscal deficit was growing rapidly. So a lot of the growth is basically government creating money and pumping it in, and all kinds of budgeting techniques and all where you are not picking that up, it was promoting the growth. So 1991, the economic crisis comes, a massive one. The Indian economy collapses, and that's when the big reforms take place. What happened in 1991? 1991, India was on the verge of default. Default basically means that you've borrowed money from all over the world and you may not be able to repay. You know, Latin American countries have a history. They'll borrow, they'll stumble, default, and then again get back. India had never defaulted. So 1991, when India was virtually all the foreign exchange was running out, there was a fear that India is going to default now, and that is a dreadful thing for India. India has never done it. What was happening before that is often called loan juggling. In the last days before India's real stumble in 1991, this is the simple thing that India was doing. You borrow from one country, one big corporation, pay back someone else from whom you've borrowed. Then you borrow from someone else and pay back someone else. So you keep yourself afloat, but by juggling the loan, take from one, pay another. And over here I have to digress for a moment because there is a delightful story that some of you will know about, Shibram Chakraborty's story, which actually in my book, which I wrote for MIT Press on development economics, I put in a short excerpt of this story because it's a perfect description of what was happening, not just in India, but Peru and a couple of other countries, loan juggling. I'll tell you very briefly, many of you will know this. Shibram, it's written in first person, gets up one morning, he needs 500 rupees. 500 টাকার ভীষণ দরকার, কোথায় পাবো? He remembers that he had a friend. I may be telling the story with slight marginal incorrectness, but roughly this is the story. He remembers a friend, Govardhan. Govardhan was a very goody-goody person. So he feels that from Govardhan he can get 500 rupees. So he goes to Govardhan and tells, Bhai Govardhan, you are so close to me, though I have not seen you for so many years, I keep thinking about you, you're a lovely person. But in the end he says, can you give me 500 rupees? আজকে শনিবার, আমি বুধবার তোমাকে 500 টাকা ফেরত দিয়ে যাব. So Govardhan after some time says, okay, and gives 500 rupees. So Shibram says, 500 টাকা নিয়ে এলাম. যেমন হয় উইথ লোনস তখনই খরচ হয়ে গেল বুধবার যখন এসেছে তখন হি ওয়েকস আপ अगेन সেজ এবার কি করব হাউ ডু আই পে ব্যাক গোবর্ধন দেন হি রিমেম্বার্স হর্ষবর্ধন अगेन an innocent boy in class so he goes to হর্ষবর্ধন and says ভাই হর্ষ তোমার কথা কত ভাবি যদিও দেখা হয় না গল্প টল্প করে বলল 500 টাকা দিতে পারবে আজকে বুধবার শনিবার তোমাকে ফেরত দিয়ে দেব নিশ্চয়ই বলে he takes 500 rupees from হর্ষবর্ধন goes to Govardhan and says my word is my word বুধবার 500 টাকা রইল my repayment record as a financial economist says 100% I repaid what I owe you হয়ে গেল তারপরে of course Saturday comes and he then needs money to pay back হর্ষবর্ধন so he goes to Govardhan and says গোবর্ধন দেখেছো তো আমি টাকা নিলে সব সময় ফেরত দিই প্লিজ আমাকে 500 টাকা দাও আবার ফেরত দিয়ে যাব দেন হোয়াট হ্যাপেন্স ইজ প্রত্যেক শনিবার গোবর্ধনের কাছ থেকে 500 টাকা প্রত্যেক বুধবার হর্ষবর্ধনের থেকে 500 টাকা ঘুরছে ইটস এক্স্যাক্টলি হোয়াট পেরু ওয়াজ ডুইং এক্স্যাক্টলি দিস লোন জাগলিং And loan juggling, the risk is defaults can happen, but Shibram does not go into this. But the end of Shibram's story is so delightful that even in my mathematical economics book, I describe the end of the story. One day in the morning, this is going on. Saturday, Wednesday, 500 টাকা, 500 টাকা, 500 টাকা. একদিন সকালে রাস্তা দিয়ে হাঁটছেন, হঠাৎ দেখে একদিক থেকে গোবর্ধন আসছে, একদিক থেকে হর্ষবর্ধন. শিবরাম বলছে আমার তো গায়ে কাঁটা দিয়ে উঠলো যে কেলেঙ্কারি কাণ্ড. কিন্তু বুদ্ধি খুব প্রেজেন্স অফ মাইন্ড দুজনকে বলল ভাই হর্ষবর্ধন ভাই গোবর্ধন কি সৌভাগ্য আমার দুজনকে একসঙ্গে পেয়েছি বলল দেখো তোমাদের একটা প্ল্যান দেবো তোমাদের কিচ্ছু অদল বদল হবে না আমার অনেক সময় নষ্ট হচ্ছে সেটা বেঁচে যাবে প্রত্যেক শনিবার গোবর্ধন হর্ষবর্ধনকে 500 টাকা দাও প্রত্যেক বুধবার হর্ষবর্ধন গোবর্ধনকে ওই 500 টাকা দাও আমি চললাম বলে পালিয়ে গেলেন It's such a delightful story and captures the essence of this, and India was in the middle of this. India went to the International Monetary Fund, took money, put in reforms, made very important reforms. Manmohan Singh was that time the finance minister, Narasimha Rao the prime minister. Among the reforms, I want to show you one picture over there, which will show you what a good reform can do. There were errors, but that was a period of যদি পাওয়ার পয়েন্টটি অন করতে পারি দেখি আপনার পেছনে পাওয়ার পয়েন্ট জিয়াজি ওইটা হ্যাঁ আচ্ছা I'll show you what happens with the reforms. The Indian reform of 1991 to 1993 roughly, there was a point of time when India had enough foreign exchange for 13 days of imports. After that, either imports stop, in which case calamity in the country, or there is international default, India would be blacklisted, everything, when some money comes in. Very important reforms were put in over there, many things. But to my mind, two of the most important things were the permit license Raj that was talked about, where for everything you want to do, you have to get permission from a bureaucrat, which had become a crippling part of the Indian economy. It was slowing down enterprise from big businesses to small businesses. In fact, you know, these things typically hurt small businesses much more because the big businesses know how to get around and get their permits. The small businesses could not flourish because you needed permission from the bureaucracy for everything. India's bureaucracy is extremely talented. I've worked very closely with them. But if you just fill them up with space to block movements, the economy begins to stumble. The license permit Raj was deliberately removed. For a lot of things, you do not need licenses and permits, number one. Number two, many other things happen. Number two is, India was virtually becoming like a closed economy. Import tariffs, when you import something, yes, countries have it at 10%, 15%, 5%. I remember Manmohan Singh's speech that time. India is bringing down the ceiling on import tariff from 200%. You immediately know where India's tariffs had reached. So India's economy was opened up, money could flow in and out. Both direction was made easier, imports was made easier, exports was made easier, the opening up of the economy, a bit risky in the beginning. Because when you allow for this, there's a chance of money flowing out. But let me give you a little bit of economic logic here, what this did. You know, just think of this in two stages. If a country has a law that you can't take your foreign exchange out, once the foreign exchange has come into the country, then it immediately means that if you are earning foreign exchange abroad, if you're there, the first thing you'll do is not bring the money into the country, because you know, so it's called backward induction. You know that once you've brought the money into the country, the laws are so severe, you can't take your dollars out if the need arises. So one of the things that India did at that time was cut this backward induction thing and say that people are allowed to take their foreign exchange out much more easily. Of course, in the beginning, there's a big risk. If everyone begins to take foreign exchange out, you're going to be completely dried up of that. So the IMF stood by. India made this rule whereby you can take it out. So the logic of this is the logic of backward induction, that if you tell people that you can't take your money out, people won't bring money in. And if you look at the first, I've got over here about 30 years, India's foreign exchange reserves would be about $5 billion. It goes up by 2 billion, you celebrate, it drops by 2 billion, it's a crisis, it remains there. People basically don't bring money in. You know, backward induction, in my economic research analysis, I use a lot of backward induction. I may not have time today, but if I have, I will mention in other areas, corruption control, you use these arguments. As I was thinking of today's lecture, I was wondering, why do I use more than other economists, these backward induction with end period, backward loop arguments. Suddenly realized my father was very good at this, and while thinking of today's lecture, it came back. When I was very small, আমরা Uttar Kolkata in a big joint family with neighbors, children and all coming in, we used to live. আমাদের এক neighborer child, Bhushan Gunda, naughty, climbed up a pipe very difficult to the roof and could not come down, was crying over there. He was finally brought down and everyone was saying, what a brave child to have climbed up a pipe like this. শুধু আমার বাবা একটু চিন্তিত হয়ে বলল যে সাহস বুঝছি, কিন্তু পাইপে ওঠার আগে যে কি করে নাব্যটা ভাবে না, সেটাও কিন্তু একটু চিন্তার ব্যাপার। That is exactly backward induction argument, that you induct backwards and then take a decision now. I might have occasion to touch on this when I talk about corruption. after the reform takes place, India's foreign exchange reserve climb is the kind of data which you rarely see, just speaks up. Within a decade or so, it had reached from $5 billion to $300 billion. Now India is at $550 billion, very comfortable foreign exchange reserve situation. But it needed one intelligent policy move at that time, so you can make mistakes through not doing that right. Let me come to more recent times. After the reforms of 1991 to 1993, India's economic growth, and this is acknowledged by everyone, steps up. 6%, roughly 6% per annum. From 1993-94, India is growing at 6% per annum. Growth dips a little bit in the year 1997, nothing to do with India. The East Asian crisis had happened. India's growth dips to 4.5%. Luckily, India was still opening up. One of the problems of a very open economy is it helps you grow, but trouble elsewhere will come into your country also, so you have to be prepared for that. India was not that open by 1997. Little dip, it picks up again. India's years of magic growth was 2003. The growth goes very high. Till the year 2011, growth remains very high, almost uniformly around 8% per annum. There is one dip during the year of the Great Recession, 2008-9, picks up again. After that, there was the difficult period, the COVID, but the growth has picked up. We are at 7.6% roughly, so which is a very robust growth. Very little I want to tell you about this period, and then I was in government during 2.5 years, so I'll give you a little bit of the description that year, and I want to speculate a little bit about India and the world and where we go from here. You know, my years 2009 to 2012, I was very hands-on involved. Many areas where you can use really intricate economic arguments for policies. One where it worked, I'll give you an example, auction of 3G spectrum. That caused controversies, political controversies, but unfortunately we live in a political world. The policy that was done is an auction was designed. What was happening is India was about to sell 3G spectrum. The way government usually sells these things, no matter what it is, road contract, this, that, bureaucrats will sit down, will calculate the value of this, then sell it to some businessman. I was in government, we evaluated a part of the 3G spectrum as $7 billion. Bureaucrats did the calculation, I don't understand this, we valued this at $7 billion. Then I argued with the Prime Minister then, Manmohan Singh ji, and others also argued that India should do what Americans do, which is an auction. A well-designed auction can make a very big difference. It was sold through an auction. What we thought will fetch $7 billion fetched $15 billion through a well-designed auction. I'll give you one piece of auction theory. I'll leave it. The students may be interested. You know, when you do a regular auction, you've all come for a work of art. I put down the art over here. Everyone will write what they are willing to bid on this, and the highest bidder will get this piece. In this auction, people don't reveal the maximum they are willing to pay. Why should you reveal? You look at the hall and say, people are not going to bid that high, so people bid the winning bid, keep the bid lower than the maximum. No one will go beyond what you want to pay, but will you go up to how much you want to pay? No, you will think in terms of keeping it low. But an ideal auction, you want people to reveal their value of it. It struck an economist called Vickery, a special auction. I will tell you what the auction is. I won't give you the logic of it. Some students will be able to see it. This is called a second price auction. Second price auction is everyone write down how much you are willing to pay. I will collect these slips. The person who has bid the highest will get it, but will pay the price of the second highest bidder. This is called the second price auction. And if you go home and think, if it's this kind of a two-tiered auction, it is in your self-interest to bid the maximum you're willing to pay. A two-price auction of this kind makes people reveal their highest price. So auction theory has a lot of great intricacies. Someday I'll come here and tell you about it, but that was done. Inflation was a dreadful problem. It continued, and corruption control. Corruption control, I will just say, I've written about this extensively. I was very involved in some of this. You have to understand one thing, that corruption is very big in India, but corruption control needs two things. You need the determination, honesty that I want to put an end to it, but that's not enough. To control corruption is like a complex surgery. You want to take out the malignant part of the tissues without damaging the healthy parts. A bulldozed action against corruption is going to bring the economy to a halt. The design of corruption control is extremely hard. I do work very actively in this field on the design and all. You have to think through that. So that remained indeed a problem. Let me just come to the current situation and talk a little bit about where we are. India's overall growth is doing well. No doubt about that, and some good policies have been put in like GST, but there have been also problems. Two of the biggest problems, one which is not widely reported because it's a figure that is of interest to economists but not others, is the share of the national income that is invested. So not what you're eating up and wearing as clothes, but what is being put in as investment, factories, even human capital, ports, everything together. We do hear the headline news, but if you look at overall investment as fraction of GDP, it's going down. India, by the year 2010-11, had reached an investment rate, roughly 40% of the national income was being invested, which is like the East Asian countries. And India was growing very, very well. From 2010-11, a slow dip begins to take place, and now it is down to less than 30%. So from 40%, it's less than 30%. And a counterpart of this is the savings rate, which was around 38% at that time, now down to 30%. This has happened steadily, and unfortunately, one area where India took a lot of pride where we are doing badly is data. Not enough data is being put out, because one of the things you have to do, when you praise certain features of the country, you should be strong enough and confident enough to also say that, look, there are these features where we are not doing well, this is the data, then only can you take corrective action. We are not doing enough of that. The other problem is, it goes together. Inequality is reaching an all-time high, and youth unemployment is shockingly high. This is Government of India data. The youth unemployment is very, very high, and by youth unemployment, let me clarify, it is not all the fraction of the youngsters who are unemployed. Fraction of the youngsters who want to work and unemployed. So not that the ones in college are being counted as unemployed. That unemployment is very high, and we need to act on this. The world is in a very, very difficult stage. Let me just take 5 minutes and I will end about what can the world do, what can India do. My own belief is, for the global economy is changing in ways which was last seen during the Industrial Revolution, roughly from 1750 to 1850. The reason why we came out of the Industrial Revolution successfully is because of, first of all, fantastic thinkers, for the first time grappling with what is this strange mechanism called the economy, with hundreds and thousands of people going about their own jobs, but they are together also building an economy. This German economist, tragic character, because he died completely unknown, having written a magnificent book which no one knew about, Hermann Heinrich Gossen, said, I want to do for the human sciences what Copernicus did for the stars. Put them all together and try to understand. And his work was a masterpiece. He died completely unknown. In his last years, the few copies of his book, he was going around trying to get it out to burn them because he was so disenchanted with the world. That's Gossen's life. But there were dramatic thinkers from Adam Smith, John Stuart Mill, who's changing. Also policies. And inequality today is at a level you have to think in terms of corrective policies. What I do feel pleased about, a couple of super rich people in America are beginning to argue that we may be super rich. At the same time, we want a system where some people will not be so rich when some people are that poor. We need a system of transfers which brings about greater equality in the country. We have to begin to give greater thought to this. And youth unemployment and things like this are a counterpart to this, for which we need to bring in attention. The two sectors which I think are going to be in the forefront, where all over the world you need to invest, are education and health. And let me just tell you one thing. When we talk of GDP, national income growing, we typically tend to think of more cars, more houses, more aeroplanes, more hotels. But GDP formally for economists is not just those things. Whatever we value, all those things put together is the GDP. So if you value greater health, that's a part of GDP. If you value literature and music and want to take in all that, that's a part of GDP. My own belief is we are at a juncture like the dramatic changes of the Industrial Revolution. We need dramatic policies. The Industrial Revolution brought in policies which were unthinkable at that time. The income tax in 1842 when it came, people said it's a shocking intrusion in our lives. Now we know that was a kind of policy you do need. We have to think of policies like that in today's world. The two sectors where Ramakrishna Mission actually plays a very important role: education, creative education. A lot of our labor is going to be gone because machines will come in. My calculation is India has a 10-year window. Our wages are still low. We can get into a space where Vietnam, Bangladesh, Mexico, Thailand, all are jostling for. India has space there, and India is in a global spot. We can use that. But that space is going to go. It's going to be creative education. We want to train our students with the best forms of education. We also want to invest in a huge way in health, and I feel there is scope for global income generation so that people come from great distances. India does a little bit of that for health. India can become a hub for global education, where people come from other countries to acquire education over here, it can grow. One historical example, Argentina and United States in the 1915, 1920, they were neck to neck. And there were American writings saying Argentina is going to overtake United States. That did not happen. By 1930, it was clear U.S. is going much further ahead. What could have caused it? History again. Never be pompous enough to feel sure you know, but to the best of one's knowledge, there were two things which happened. Argentina went hyper-nationalistic. Trade barriers, people barriers, all kinds of things became a very, very closed economy. United States was beginning to open up. Talent coming in from Germany by 1968, from India, was very open. But even more important than that, higher education and creative sector. The top universities, not enough is written about that. I feel that was the secret of America. The huge investment in that gave it a space in the changing world that gave it a huge edge, and the economy took off. Difficult times, no one knows the answer, but I'm so glad that we have institutions which are not only inspired by the spiritual wonders of the world. I mean, I am a skeptic. I'm just mystified by the world. Most of the time I stand and say, I don't understand what the world is. But a place where you can pause and think with an open heart about the mysticism of the world. A place where you value education. I've been to several institutions associated with Ramakrishna Mission. Absolutely the highest standards. Teaching students that, it is the creative space in your brain that you have to open up. I'm really grateful for that and grateful for giving me this opportunity to speak. Thank you very much.
Absolutely brilliant class comes to an end so suddenly. And we have had a lot of things to learn from him. India's journey, economic journey since independence, its ups and downs, its missed opportunities, the particular opportunities ahead of us, and what we need to do. He ends with two particular areas specially to be taken care of. First is creative education, and the second one is health. And one is tempted to refer to Swami Vivekananda's speech on 27th January in 1901, when he presided over a prize-giving ceremony. He referred to, for India's progress, we need two particular things. One is proper care of children's health, and the second one, right kind of education to be imparted to them. And there is no stopping for India. Let's hope India will be reaching a particular stage we are all hoping for. Now, the vote of thanks to be proposed by our Vice President of the Managing Committee, Sri Ananda Kumar Mitro, who needs no introduction to us, and that will mark the end of this brilliant program today. Thank you very much.
Swami Suparnanandaji, Professor Kaushik Basu, His Excellency, the Governor of West Bengal in absentia, and ladies and gentlemen, my task is to offer a vote of thanks, a concept which is imported, not Indian, certainly not for Bengalis. When a visitor comes to our home or says something good which you like, we don't say thank you. That's a very hackneyed, formal word uttered when offered a cup of tea. We offer our heartfelt, what you call thank, in a different manner. And I would like to follow that and not that imported concept which is rather, in my submission, misleading, imperfect. We say, when the time comes for saying goodbye to a visitor, what do we say? Abar ashben. Not that, আজকে আসার জন্য খুব ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি আপনাকে. This is nothing but an echo of, you remember how we say goodbye to Mother Goddess, Ma Durga, on the Vijaya Dashami day, when you perform the Visarjan ceremony and say goodbye, you go to Kailash. What do you say? Punara Gamanaya Cha. And that's what I like to say to the delightful speakers we had this evening with us. I say, and may I have your approval, in fact, it is on your behalf what I'm proposing, that let us record our appreciation for what we have heard from Professor Kaushik Basu, which was punched with humor, wit. He has spoken about evolution of Indian economics practically, journey from day of independence till today, and this other was and the road ahead. Did we hear anything on the road ahead? Anyway, that still we all really, you can say, grateful to him. Therefore, I know, we all know he's a very busy person, having practically a globetrotter, moving from place to place. But today, I hope your body language indicates that he has delighted all of you. And we would like to tell him, come again. Come often and share your thoughts with us. Our Excellency the Governor, he has left. I don't know what should I do, how do I offer our thing. There's a thing called posthumous award of Padma Shri and Padma Bhushan, etc. But I can, instead of, may I modulate that and say, offering appreciation in absentia, that a new kind of offering thanks. And we are all grateful to Swami Suparnanandaji for choosing and selecting good speakers and inaugurating this program you have every year on the Founders' Day. Now, may I say, let us close the meeting of today by saying Namaskar.
Do you have anything to announce?
Thank you very much. We shall meet again.